Guys, gals, non-binary pals, welcome back once again to Rhyme Signatures, where today we are going to be taking a look at something quite close to my heart. Now, I make no illusions or pretensions to being a big fan of the more modern music, and I will say, for my money, I believe that the 2010s were one of the better decades of recent times in terms of new releases, certainly within the prog sphere, you know. So, to that end, I've collated what I feel to be a not necessarily definitive list of the best 10 records of the 2010s. These sort of lists always tend to fluctuate depending on my mood on any given day, to be honest with you. So what my 10 favourites are now might not necessarily be my 10 favourites in 6 months' time, you know. But that being said, I do feel that this list still represents what are some of the absolute cream of the crop from the 2010s. Now, what I've not done here is ranked them from 10 through to 1, because honestly, they could all potentially be at the top spot. Nor have I selected one from each year, because I kind of didn't want to pigeonhole myself into those sort of limitations. The only limitations I have imposed upon myself is you're only allowed one album per band, so you can't have like a Haken sweep or a Leprous sweep or anything like that. You get one entry and that's your lot, and you'll be damn happy with it. Right, with that being said, in alphabetical order, let's stop prattling around and talk about the best albums of the 2010s. Kicking things off, it should be of little surprise to anybody who's been following this channel for a while now that Parallax 2 by Between the Buried and Me enters the list of the best albums of the 2010s. This album is second only to Colours for me in terms of how affecting and how brilliant it is from the band. I feel that this is a better progressive metal album than Colours, even if it's not quite as good of an album overall. It's an extraordinary example of just how to craft one of the most affecting and dynamic sci-fi themed progressive metal albums that's ever been made. What the band managed to achieve with Parallax 2 is something I don't think they will ever be able to do again. This really does feel almost like it's a bit of a lightning in a bottle situation. Everything clicked, there's not a single weak moment to be found on here. Even the filler tracks I think are pretty damn good as well, you know. They work within the context of the music, even if you would never really go around listening to Autumn in isolation or anything like that, you know. You'd be a bit weird if you did that. But it's an incredible record, absolutely love this one. Hands down one of the best Between the Buried and Me albums ever made, and definitely one of the best albums of the 2010s. Right, coming up next, I have a few albums on this list which I happen to own in both formats because I just love them that much, and the first example of this is Cult of Luna with A Dawn to Fear. Look at that, it's like Big Luna, Little Luna. I brought the CD along because I can't be bothered holding up the vinyl for like the whole segment, so that stays on the floor. CD stays in the hand. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Cult of Luna, I would put these guys on a pedestal as being one of the most consistent bands who've ever existed. Everything they've put out is at the very least good, and most of it is honestly quite excellent, and no more than this particular album as far as I'm concerned. A Dawn to Fear feels like the crowning jewel of the band's discography. It contains all the crushing brutality that we've come to expect from earlier releases, but it also has a great deal of the atmospherics, of the electronica side of things that they've been flirting around with in stuff like Mariner when they paired up with Julie Christmas. But I really do think that this is a phenomenal piece of work. It's one of the greatest sort of progressive post-metal albums that's ever been made. And of course it's got a circle on the cover, so I'm slightly biased towards it, but yeah, no, whatever. But this is an absolutely phenomenal piece of work. I mean, admittedly, yes, maybe it's a little bit on the long side. It's nearly 80 minutes in length, so it can be a bit of a challenge to get through it in one sitting, but I happen to rather like their aesthetic, so those 80 minutes just fly by for me. It's like, whee, like that, you know. I find it very easy to listen to. You might not, but if you've never listened to Cult of Luna before, this is also a great starting point. Just be prepared to have the walls shaken a little bit, shall we say, by the thunderous noise within. And speaking of the thunderous noise within, coming up next, it's Deafheaven and Sunbather. This is the 10th anniversary vinyl, I believe, so it's quite pretty on the inside, but I can't be bothered fishing it out because I'm lazy. We will retire that to the floor and continue talking about it in this format here. Yep, 2013's Opus. When this came out, a lot of people were kind of blown away by it, myself included. I'd never really much paid attention to black metal before Sunbather. Now, obviously, I would cite myself as a fan of the genre now, but I don't think I would be had it not been for how easily Sunbather made it to get into the genre. Yes, the vocals are extremely dissonant. Yes, it's kind of scary when you first listen to it if you're not expecting it. But behind all of that, you move past the acidity of the vocals, and what you are presented with is some of the most beautiful, textured, exotic soundscapes I've ever heard in music. It is fabulous. It is such a ride. Nothing is left to the imagination. Everything is incredibly maximalist. It's a beautiful, sumptuous journey, and I love it so very much. It's one of my favourite albums of all time, let alone of the 2010s, and I cannot heap enough praise on it. This is one of the albums that deserves the hype. People spoke of it in reverent tones, and they still do, and I think it is completely justified. Not overrated, unbelievable album, I love it. Right, coming up next, it's The Deer Hunter, an Act 4 Rebirth in Reprise. Another album that transformed my listening experiences. Yeah, before this album I was not really into like indie rock or the softer side of prog. I was very much a kind of guy for like all seasons, you know. Doesn't matter, it's like winter, summer, spring, autumn. I was into growly boys. And then these guys came along and they changed everything for me. Casey and the lads, I can't say enough nice things about this album. This is perfect. It's one of the few records in the world I do consider to be perfect. There is not a single moment on this that is wasted, or a single moment that is misspent. Everything works. It's beautiful within the context of the story of the entire Act series. It's a great entry point as well. It was my entry point to the band. It's very accessible, but it's got a huge amount of depth, and you'll probably get a real kick out of all the leitmotifs when you start exploring Acts 1 through 3. This is a seminal piece of work. I cannot say enough good things about this. If you've never had the joy of experiencing The Deer Hunter, please, please, please go and listen to this album. It will change your life, I promise you. Okay, next up. You knew they were going to be on here somewhere, but which particular album am I going to go for? It's the obvious pick, I'm sorry, it just is. It's Haken's The Mountain. Yeah, I know, everybody picks The Mountain as their favourite, and I was torn. I was tempted to include Visions, I really, really was, but ultimately, I think I would include The Mountain over any of the other particulars from the 2010s from Haken just because of how consistent this one is. There are plenty of songs on the other albums that I do massively prefer to this. For example, you know, Visions' title track is unbelievable, Celestial Elixir off Aquarius, The Architect of Affinity. You know, these songs, I think, are better than any of the individual songs on The Mountain, but this as a whole is the best Haken experience. It's a great starting point for the band. You'll get to experience them at the peak of their powers, really, if you will. I really feel this is where they were at the zenith of their ability as a band, you know. And I do feel it's been on a slightly downward, trajectory since The Mountain. Like, you've reached the peak and now you're kind of going back down. Not to say the band is bad, good lord, no, but nothing's quite reached the majesty, shall we say, of this record. Everything is so beautiful, so consistent, so brutal in places. Oh, it's magnificent. Pareidolia, one of my favourite Haken tracks of all time. It's so good. I mean, you've got a mandolin breakdown. It's cool, Get to that part and tell me you're not going to have the biggest grin on your face. I love this album and it deserves its spot in this list. Right, I'm going to keep Nathan on shuffle happy with this one. It's the Neal Morse Band and Similitude of a Dream. Oh, my favourite of Neal Morse's entries in the 2010s. Not my favourite Neal Morse entry. That very much belongs to Sola Scriptura. Spoilers for any upcoming videos that I might be talking about Neal Morse in. Yeah, I love Similitude of a Dream. It's massive, it's grand, it's sprawling, it's ridiculously overblown and pompous, and I love every single ridiculous minute of it. It's wonderful. This was the Neal Morse Band playing at their absolute best. I love the Great Adventure that came after this. Or is it the Grand Adventure? The Great Adventure? The one that came after this. I don't remember. Whatever it was called. We don't know. Weirdly, this is on Metal Blade Records, which I always thought was a bit weird. Like Neal Morse on Metal Blade. Like, what? I mean, look. Right there. That's weird to me, I don't associate Neal Morse with Metal Blade. I'm like, he's on Inside Out, right? Maybe he wasn't back then. I don't know. Similitude of a Dream. Incredible. We've got the making of going on here, which is a great watch if you've never seen it. But this is one of the strongest concept albums that's ever been produced by Neal Morse. Every single person on the band is so incredible. Mike Portnoy firing on all cylinders. Eric Gillette, unbelievable. Randy George, everyone's incredible. Fantastic record. I cannot say enough nice things about it. It's an epic to end all epics. This, if I could take one Neal Morse record with me to the grave, as much as this isn't my favourite Neal Morse record, I would still take this one just because it's got so much going on. Oh, unbelievable, wonderful record. Do check it out. Right, next up after that we have got Native Construct's Quiet World, one of my favourite one and done records, and it's a crying shame that we're never going to see anything else from this band. At least, maybe we won't, I don't know. Who knows what the future can hold? Anybody can come back from the dead, right, in terms of music, surely. But yeah, even if we never see anything else from Native Construct, and we probably won't, at least they left us with Quiet World. This really was one of the most exciting, original, and just honestly adventurous albums within the prog metal space that ever came out in the 2010s. It really did set a new standard. Hey, and look, it's on Metal Blade Records, just like the previous one was. There we go. Metal Blade absolutely killing it in the 2010s, apparently. But yeah, I would love to see more from these guys. I don't know what they're up to these days. Who knows? Maybe they're watching this video, and if you are, hello, good to see you. But no, in all seriousness, there is nothing on this album which I dislike. Everything works. This is this style of progressive metal that I'm addicted to. It's quirky, it's weird, it's off-kilter and just strange in ways that I love it so very much. It's got a little bit of bite to it as well, you know, there's some growls going on here and they sound fantastic, but it's mostly focusing on being a little bit odd. And we like odd. Here on Rhyme Signatures, we love odd. And as a result, of course, I love Native Construct. Please come back, guys. If you're watching, hi. Nice to see you. And please do make more music. I miss it. Right, into the last three now. Next up, we have Germany's The Ocean with Pelagial. Now, this is a weird one for me. This is the only 10-inch vinyl I own, and it is the instrumental version of the album. Originally, this was actually written to be an instrumental record because the Ocean's vocalist was having a, shall we say, a little bit of a problem in terms of, like, you know, performing and what have you. It all ended up absolutely fine, and we got an incredible record with some of the best instrumentals I've ever heard and some of the best vocals I've ever heard. Yeah, talk about your heavy concept albums. This one is about diving to the bottom of the ocean, and as a result, the music follows suit. It starts off light and breezy and approachable and, you know, nice, pleasant almost, but you start pushing down below the surface, and before you know it, the crushing weight of 10,000 tons of water sitting on top of you really reflects in the music. This is one of the most extraordinary records I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. I remember hearing this for the first time in 2013 and thinking, my God, I've never heard anything quite like this. One of the best progressive post-metal albums ever made, up there with A Dawn to Fear by Cult of Luna, which I talked about earlier. But I would argue this one's slightly better, mostly because I think it's got a bit more originality going on to it, but it's absolutely phenomenal. If you've never had the pleasure of listening to this album, I'm extraordinarily jealous of you, and I cannot wait for you to experience life beneath the waves. Right, we've got two left, and one of these is not quite like the rest on this list, because this is from a genre which, again, I'm not normally a big fan of. This is a bit of a post-hardcore record. This is Holy Vacants by Trophy Scars. Yeah, I love this. This did take me a little while to find on CD, and now that I have it, I'm obsessed with the fact that I have it. This is really, truly something special. I call it, post-hardcore, but there's a lot of proggy leanings to it. I mean, least of all is the storyline. It's about these two people who find, like, an angel dying in the back of a taxi cab, they drink its blood, it all gets a bit weird. It's great. It's an absolutely superb piece of work. Instrumentally, it's fascinating. They do so much with what they've got going. Vocally, it's really, really exciting, with both male and female vocals taking almost equal part across the record. There's some of my absolute favourite riffs of all time located on this record, and it really is just one of those singularly unique experiences that I think everybody, no matter what your musical leanings might happen to be, deserves to listen to this. You really do need to check this one out. It's such an intriguing concept, you know, it's such a bold statement on the world that I don't think Trophy Scars will ever do better than this. It's a wonderful piece of work, almost I would call it a work of art. Do not miss this if you've never heard it before. And last on the list, it's another double boy. It's, oh yeah, Steven Wilson's Hand Cannot Erase. Oh man, oh yeah. Now, everybody's got their favourite Steven Wilson album. Most people of the sort of like classic prog community will point towards Raven, and Raven very nearly made it onto this. But I feel that Hand Cannot Erase deserves the placement a little bit more than Raven does, if just for the fact that this is a bit more original. As good as Raven is, and as much as I do genuinely love it, it's not the most original of pieces, you know. It's a love letter to the 70s, which is great, you know, and I love that it's a love letter to the 70s. But Hand Cannot Erase was a singularly unique concept album, and it really does contain what I consider to be some of Steven's most adventurous, interesting, and creative instrumentation. I wasn't huge on Grace for Drowning, I'll be honest with you. I felt it was a little bit... I don't want to say directionless, because that feels wrong, but it felt like it lacked instrumental focus, which is something that I feel Hand Cannot Erase does. This is a very precise, very laser-cut album. Everything is so meticulous, so well planned and so well thought out that it's difficult to think of a single moment on this album that I don't appreciate. The ending of the album, Happy Returns, is one of the most heartbreaking moments in all of modern progressive rock. It's so beautiful. It is so... I don't know, it just fills me up from head to toe. It's an astonishing experience from start to finish. One of the greatest albums of all time. I can't remember if I placed this in my top 10 records of all time or not. I might have done, I might not have done. I'd have to recheck the video. But I'm pretty sure I did, and there's a good reason for that. It's because Hand Cannot Erase is an absolute stellar, stonking masterpiece. If you've never listened to this, stop what you're doing right now, go and check it out. You will thank me later. Right, and now that I've upset literally everybody in the whole wide world by not including their particular favourites from the 2010s on the list, let's quickly do a recap of some of my honourable mentions. Anathema's Weather Systems, Arcane's Known/Learned, Big Big Train's English Electric Part 1, Caligula's Horses in Contact, Devin Townsend Project's Deconstruction, Earthside's A Dream in Static, Gazpacho's Demon, Hadal Sherpa's Self-Titled, Isan's Arctis, Leprous' Bilateral, Moon Safari's Lover's End, Nia Bliviscaris' Portal of Eye, Mike Oldfield's Return to Omadorn, Ostura's The Room, Richelieu's Living as Ghosts with Buildings as Teeth, Rollo Tomasi's Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It, Seventh Wonder's The Great Escape, Solstafir's Otter, Southern Empire Civilization, Thank You Scientists, Stranger Heads Prevail, Thy Catafalque's Meta, Vola's In Mazes, We Lost the Sea's Departure Songs, and Wilderon's Veil of Imagination, to name but a few of my honourable mentions. So maybe those were on your list as well. I don't know. They're all incredible. I couldn't decide which the top 10 were. It was so difficult, but I eventually had to narrow it down. So yeah, there we go. So anyway, enough about my top 10s. You want to tell me about your top 10s right now. I want to see down there in the comments below what your favourite records of the 2010s are. Tell me how right I am. Tell me how wrong I am. I don't care. Talk to me. Talk to me about your music. I love it. Tell me all about your favourites. Let's hear it. And guys, if you have watched as far as this, thank you so very, very much for watching. As always, you make this worth doing. All of you, every single one of you do. I love every one of you. Thank you once again. And until next time, guys, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.